How's it going, guys? And I'm here with a review of the Now Now by the Gorillaz. So, last year was really interesting as they released their album Humans, and I had a lot of mixed emotions about it. At first, I gave it a very mixed, more so negative review, and some people were upset with me, some people agree with me. Then I did a second review where I said it wasn't as bad as the first listen, but I still wasn't committed to the album as a fan. Then recently, a few weeks ago, I did a review, a re-review 1 year later, a retrospective on Humans, and I said that I loved it. What was it about that album that took so long for me to enjoy it? Well, it was a different sound than what I was used to. I felt a much different sound than what I was accustomed to. But then I realized in the end, the album just felt like Gorillaz. I kind of taught myself in the way to like the album. I know that sounds like BS to a lot of people, but that's sometimes how it is. You're not always going to like things. You might not notice things on your first go around with a certain movie. And a lot of times I might say, well, if something was truly good, wouldn't it just be good the first time around? And, be that as it may, sometimes it's not always like that. Now, with the Now Now, I feel like this album is a lot, I won't say better, but it's a lot more digestible than it was with Humans. This album is definitely, as Damon had put it, is much like The Fall. And that was another album that I didn't like at first. But since I heard The Fall and I was accustomed to the sound on that, this album sounds dreary, but still like has a sense of positivity to it where it's not depressing, but it's definitely a solemn album. It definitely feels like more low key, but and there's not you won't hear songs like Charger on here. You won't hear songs like "We Got the Power." You think more Andromeda here, but maybe not quite as sad. The the songs are definitely in a lower key. They're definitely softer. They have good beats to them. My favorites are definitely Humility, which kicks off the album, which is an excellent choice because it is one of the stars of this album. And of course, you've got Sorcerers, which is a fantastic song. And you can see that there's songs that are named after cities in certain states here in the U.S. You've got Idaho and Kansas, which is very much like The Fall, where Damon was touring around and he would, be singing about that particular city. So that's kind of a throwback to The Fall. And for anybody who hasn't listened to that, a lot of people don't count The Fall, but it is actually counted as a studio album. So if you haven't checked that album out, I would actually suggest it. I think a lot of people gloss over it. People call it the iPad album. I think it's a great album, and I think it's very underrated, and it's cast aside as just kind of not really being a necessary album. But I think that, what do you want to consider it necessary or not is really a matter of opinion, but it still stands that it's considered as far as Gorillaz canon to be a studio album. And it's much like the Now Now. And the thing about maybe the Now Now that's maybe a little bit more digestible about it is that the fact that it has fewer features. That was probably one of my biggest concerns if you go back and you watch my first Humans review. I complained about there being too many features where almost every single song, with the exception of Andromeda and maybe a few others, they all had features on there. Every single song had somebody featured. Whether it was Vince Staples or Pusha T, was sample after sample after sample. The only sample you get here is Snoop Dogg and some other guy on Hollywood, which is a pretty good song. It's far from being the best, but these are some solid tracks. I didn't really come across any songs that I had a problem with. Seemed like there was a lot of care taken in this album. And that's the same way it was with The Fall. Many people dismiss it. And there's a lot of, weird tracks on The Fall that are not actually like songs. These are all complete songs. This feels like a very complete album. Many people said that Humans felt incomplete, and I felt that might have been. Nowadays, when I listen to it, it does feel like a nice cohesive album. The one thing that I do kind of miss are those non song tracks, believe it or not. Now, we didn't get to see those type of songs on, say, um, the first self-titled album, but you would think because they were just kind of playing around with things at that time, seeing what worked, and it was a very experimental album. But the Gorillaz is all about experimenting. So I would have liked to see, some more of kind of what we saw on the Fall, and also on Humans, like with the elevator thing. That type of stuff is fun. And when you're listening to an album, that was the thing. What I liked about Humans, when you listen to it and you listen to all those little interludes that they had, it with Murdoch in the elevator, it sounded right to me. It sounded like a cohesive album. It sounded very complete, despite what everybody else was saying at the time. I would have liked to see a few more, but that's really a minor nitpick, because I can't complain about good songs, especially when Humans was so hard to adjust to. This album is kind of, you fall right in place, and it kind of has almost that relaxing Plastic Beach type of vibe to it, and like it's a little bit more positive, a little bit more uplifting than the Fall. The Fall, right away you look at the album artwork, you kind of listen to what's going on. Damon was feeling very out of place, being on tour in the U.S. This time around, it feels a little bit more positive, feels a bit more uplifting, and right off the bat, I can't express enough how much Humility is such a great song to kick off this album. It's just a great song. It's like has a nice positive upbeat swing to it, and the way they close out the album on a very solemn note, I have to say, with Suk I believe that's how you say it. But that's a great song, and I love that repetitious guitar in there. There's something very hypnotizing, and that's also another word I have to use. Very key word here on this album is hypnotizing. There's a lot of tracks on here that will downright hypnotize you, and you will take a look at this album, and you will see that there's a lot of songs that, for me, I've already listened to the album 3 times already. One's going to work, one then coming back from work, and then again today going to work. I didn't listen to it coming back from work today, so but 3 listens back to back to back, and they were just as good as the last listen. So this seems like an album that it's not going to be that easy to get sick of. So it's consistent with the rest of the albums, and it had a more familiar Gorillaz sound. Like right away, if I had to compare it, I would say it's a lot like Plastic Beach, with some of the ideas of the Fall. It definitely kind of feels like they're definitely experimenting and seeing what works. But I feel like this album has a fuller sound. There's also, there were many instrumental pieces on the Fall, which that's why maybe some people felt that it was more of a lazy effort. Some people dare to say demos with that album. I wouldn't go so far as saying that. I just think it was extremely experimental on the Fall. But when it comes to this album, there's no instrumentals. Everything's got vocals. Everything feels complete. You've got all the instruments in there. It feels nice and complete. And also, somebody was addressing this when I did my re-review, and I didn't get a chance really to talk about it in my top 10. But you have one of the characters from the Powerpuff Girls is actually a band member, which was random as hell to me. His name escapes me for the minute, but he's part of the Gangrene Gang, and I watched it. The show as a kid. I'm not a massive Powerpuff Girls fan, but supposedly in the little storyline that they have with Murdoch, and you got to give credit. One other band has, first of all, like digital band members, and that they actually write stories. I gotta be honest, I don't completely follow what's going on with the digital band all the time. It's just I'm more of a fan of just the music, really. But the characters definitely add more to the music when you listen to them. When I see this album, I kind of picture, like, especially on a particular song on Idaho, which is a great song, and it kind of reminds me of Armorillo, on The Fall. Definitely very, very similar, I have to say, with that same type of very low key, solemn tone to it. And he talks about looking out the tour bus window, and I can imagine that not only on that song, but like Sukai as well, or Sokai, however it's pronounced. But you could definitely like picture somebody sitting on a bus looking out the window, kind of just like in their own world, just kind of mesmerized by what's going on outside the window. Just kind of daydreaming. So, if you could paint that mental picture, if the music helps you paint a mental picture, I'd say it succeeded. And that's definitely what I get from this album. It's definitely painting and illustrating a nice little picture of what's going on, with the characters, at the time. So, overall, I gotta say this album is a success after 3 listens. I already really like it a lot, and I will probably be going back for another listen probably tomorrow. And like I said, this seems like an album that, just like all the other Gorillaz albums, you could consistently listen to them, keep coming back for them, week after week, month after month, and not get sick of them. They're great songs, and like the one thing what I love is I was watching it was college kids reacting to Gorillaz songs, and there was like one chunky kid with glasses that got super excited for the Gorillaz, and he talked about how they can't be classified under a single genre, and that kid hit the nail right on the head. I don't know who put out the video, but when they do those reaction videos. But anyway, the kid really, I had said that probably a few years back to a few friends when we were discussing them. I said, the Gorillaz do so much where it's you got country, rock, rap, electronica, all these different styles coming together, R&B, reggae, and you just can't say who they are. Some people have classified them under alternative, and that's definitely a good way of maybe starting to categorize them, because they just can't be classified under one particular genre. But definitely I would just say they just can't be. There's no possible way that you could put them into like a little box, and that's what's so great about this group. And once again, they really knocked it out of the park with this album. It's a great album that deserves a listen, and I definitely recommend that you check it out. So guys, if you didn't like Humanz, if you weren't like me, if you couldn't find redemption in that album, I think you'll find a lot to love with the Now Now. So definitely go check it out. It's on Spotify, it's on iTunes and all that. Check it out on YouTube, or if you want to support them, buy the album. But I don't know who does that anymore. But anyway, guys, thanks for watching. Check out some of my other videos, especially if you enjoyed this about Gorillaz. I have my review of Humanz. I've got a top 10 list of the top 10 Gorillaz songs of all time. You'll probably enjoy that if you enjoyed this one. So thanks again for watching, guys, and I'll see you next time.